hot rodding's not dead. People just got to realize that like this hobbyist ECU stuff with open source is probably the future for hot rodding. This could be us on a weekend, plugging in a $300 ECU or trying to rewrite a trigger decoder to work on some foreign looking trigger setup on a car, engine, whatever, trying to make it run. And that's the future of hot rodding, and just running all sorts of batchy weird parts, us running Volvo parts in cars that aren't Volvos.
Yeah, my cars keep having Volvo parts on them now.
How does that keep happening?
Why does that keep happening?
Volvo coil packs, Volvo sensors.
I have the Volvo air pump on the 86.
Oh, the vacuum pump, yeah.
Yeah, that's on there.
And that's just, I think that right there, that's the heart of hot rodding that everyone seems to have lost.
From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show with Matt West.
Oh, now I have been waiting for this. I can't wait for you to hear part 2. Yes, we haven't really done a multi-part podcast before on this show, but we're doing it now. Part 2 of my discussion with Brian, talking all about tuning. If you missed part 1, I packed up the show and took it to Brian's home shop. He's a career mechanic. He's an automotive tuner. And we, on the last show, talked all about ethanol, tuning for ethanol, but also what the temporary switch from E10 fuel to E15 fuel means here in the United States, and what it means whether you've got a performance car or a daily driver. We get to all of that on the previous episode. If you haven't listened to it, check it out. Now on this one, we're going to talk about the tuning world as a whole. We're going to discuss some things that maybe Brian thinks tuners could do better, things that customers maybe ought to do before they bring him a car, and we are going to talk about right to repair and why open source standalone ECUs are one of the biggest keys to your own right to repair in the automotive space. That's all coming up here. It's Automotive ADHD. Let's talk to Brian right now. Brian, now let's talk a little bit about tuning. I want to know, from your perspective as someone who does a lot of tuning for various people, what are some things that you kind of wish people would know or maybe do before they actually brought their car to you? What are some gripes you have about that?
I hate when people say, can you chip it?
Chip it.
It's a really old school term.
It is. It's got a performance chip in it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I understand, like, for a lot of people, this is just such a black magic.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to explain to everyone, like, yes, every car has a different brain in it, essentially. It's completely designed different than any other car you see.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just, that's all like apples to oranges with every car. Even though it still runs the engine and about the same way, it's just splitting hairs a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to explain to people without like blowing their brains up about it, because it's like, oh, well, it's a different architecture. It's a different CPU. It's running entirely different. Like, it's just completely different.
Yeah.
There's no easy way to say it.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense to it. And chipping is actually something that was done back when they were a lot more simpler, where you would just remove the EEPROM or system on a chip, whatever it was, and you would put it into a flash programmer built for that specific chip and its class of chips, like Motorola, some other stuff. I mean, I can't remember all of it at the top of my head. Like, it's
all old school stuff. I mean, it's really old school stuff.
Yeah, really old school stuff.
Yeah.
And I really don't know anyone that does anymore, because it's such a hassle. Because what this does is allows you, obviously, to dump the information off of the EEPROM, and then assuming you know where the data is that you're looking for, because you're still looking at just a blob of binary. There's nothing that's understandable about it.
Right.
People think, can you just change it? And it's like, it doesn't work that way. It's like reading a different language entirely, and anything you change can change everything else. So you have to know what you're looking for. You have a really in-depth knowledge of the hardware you're working with. There's a lot of reverse engineering, and that's not stuff I do. That's just an entirely different field of work.
Now, do you find that people are doing that when they're asking you for older vehicles, or does that also apply to some of the newer cars? I know, like some of the newer Supras, for example, have a sort of a cutoff between the earlier cars and now the later cars with their ECUs being quote unquote locked down. What does that mean? Is it sort of the same vein, or is it really a different thing?
It's really hard to say without seeing in front of me, but I mean, manufacturers be doing things all sorts of different ways to try and preventively keep their stuff proprietary and from letting people mess with it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see this even with game consoles and forms of media, watermarks,
well, just
signing
PCs in general,
key signing on like signing software so that like hardware won't execute this program unless it's signed with this key. And the only person that has the key obviously is that company, like Sony or Xbox, Microsoft, whatever it does, so that even though you could go make yourself a PlayStation game, like you could know the architecture, you could know everything about it, you could write a program that would definitely execute on that hardware. But because it's not signed, the firmware's not going to let you execute it.
That's a lot like the discussion I had recently on the show, talking about the systems in place that Volkswagen has. I did a really big rant on the show about this. And for those watching on video, you could probably find it as a pinned video coming up here on YouTube. But the fact is that, Volkswagen has the ability to say that, okay, this component, say this transmission, and it's got a TCM in it, transmission control module, that TCM is looking for a VIN number from another module, and it has to match. If it doesn't match,
it's preventing you from swapping like computer modules between cars with different VINs. And that's been a thing for honestly a long time. I don't even know why it's all of a sudden like been broadcasted like as a new thing.
Well, it is because there's a bill right now being proposed to kill it. That's why. But
I really hope they do, because it's ridiculous how much e-waste this creates.
Oh yeah, it's absurd. And even when I talked about it on the show last, my whole point was that Volkswagen has been doing it for 20 years. It goes back to the very early 2000s that they first started doing this, and they started implementing it in more and more sophisticated ways.
And a lot of it is just is cash grabs, because a lot of these new cars now, I don't know specific models. I'm not going to say anything specific. I do know that like Atlantis, I believe it is. Stellantis. Why did I say Atlantis?
I want to go to Atlantis and see the cars they have there, like upside down scuba cars. I don't know.
I speak terrible English, and I only know how to speak English, so this is a really bad combination.
Side tangent on here. I've had listeners message me from around the world, and I've had people message me. Like there was a guy in Eastern Europe, and he's like, yeah, I love listening to the show because it helps me practice my English. And I'm like, dear God, no, you don't want to practice your English with my show. Please don't do that. It's going to end. You're going to have a bunch of people running around there talking like I do, and you don't want that. So
my name is Matt West. I can just see it now.
Maybe I should start a cult. Never mind.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I'll start a cult. Anyway, back to that. I mean,
what I was saying is like they're doing this thing now where it's called like secure gateway modules. And it's become a thing now, I believe, with a lot of these new cars that are equipped with like onboard, like live operating systems, like Android and stuff like that. And it's kind of concerning because they're putting them in as like a hardware firewall that's supposed to stand between like the OBD2 port or the vehicle's connectivity to the outside world and the electronics in the car, which sounds good on paper, right? We're trying to protect the car in a secure fashion, from like those types of cyber attacks and stuff. But at the same time, I can't go hook up my scan tool and clear codes anymore. You have to pay a subscription in order to get onto the secure gateway, which is insane. So I'm here paying like, I don't know, $20 a month, I think, for my Snap-on Apollo, I think it is, or whatever it is.
But you've got the nice fancy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm already paid a substantial amount of money for this tool that basically does stuff that's been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
To connect to a car and to basically get a handshake from the manufacturer that says, yeah, you paid for your subscription. You're allowed to clear codes.
Even though, physically speaking, you have physical access to the car. Physically, there is no technical reason that your scan tool shouldn't be able to communicate with the modules in the car. It's just purely a arbitrary paywall
Yeah, it's if that's what it feels like. It's really hard to decipher whether this is actually like benefiting us from preventing our cars from being cyber attacked in some way, or if it's really just there because they're trying to find a new way to get their cut of the pie with private parties.
Yeah,
like private shops.
We've
seen that.
We know the reason,
and I've also seen that with the EV trend. I mean, every manufacturer, Tesla's the one that got hit for it. But trying to basically prevent people from being able to repair their own cars is just ridiculous. And all it does is incentivizes the next generation to not be able to fix things, to not be able to think for themselves. And that's not going very well for us, is it?
No, and as car guys, right? As car guys, I feel like we have, at least, especially when you're a car guy and you work on your own stuff. Now, you're a career mechanic. You do a lot of stuff, but in your free time, you wrench on your own stuff. And being invested in cars like this, I think shows a sense of self-sufficiency. Like, this is my machine. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to fix it, even if it's going to be a real pain. Even if I don't really know how to, I'll figure out a way. There's a sort of like, if you're the kind of guy who wrenches on your own car, there's a certain level of self-sufficiency that you have. And
they're implying that people... that the systems are getting too complex that people just simply couldn't be able to work on these safely. And I mean, to a degree with like the electric vehicles, I can see that with like the batteries and stuff, but that's not going to stop someone from taking it apart. We've already have people doing that. If someone thinks they possess the knowledge and the common sense or whatever to do it, and they have the tools, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
So you by limiting the access to knowledge and parts and repair, you're only ensuring like that they might do something dangerous without knowing it.
Yeah.
Like it just sounds ridiculous.
It is.
It's like playing Big Brother, even though you aren't in any way should be responsible for what they do. And that's like another part of this whole culture we have now where it's like you can just sue for anything, so like everyone's just terrified that like, oh, if they open the batteries and they get shocked, they're going to sue us if we don't make it very freaking obvious and impossible to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really crazy culture to me.
It is. It's a sense of personal accountability that's gone now.
Yeah.
The notion is that you don't have to be accountable for yourself. You don't have to be accountable for your own safety because, oh my gosh, something let me do something irresponsible. No, you did something obviously irresponsible and got hurt because of it. That's not to say there's certain cases where certain things failed in a way that was unexpected. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm saying in general, there is this notion now in our culture that you don't have to be responsible for your own actions and importantly, responsible for your own safety. Because at the end of the day, the person first and foremost responsible for your safety is you. At the end of the day. And that's just how that is. And manufacturers have been either reacting this way because they're worried about being sued or they're pressured to react this way by governments who want to have more control over your life. It's all, and it may just be all of the above even.
It's like they're just constantly trying to push that accountability onto somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, we made it clear it's that guy's fault. They're so worried about accountability because no one will take accountability for their own actions.
Yeah. Yeah. And that ties into every level of not just, the automotive industry, but that ties into a lot of realms of our life. Now, looking at that in the automotive industry, and granted, I wasn't planning on doing a right to repair discussion, but I think this is...
yeah, here we are. From chrome chips on Hondas to this.
Yeah. Yeah, but it ties into it. And, I think things like, for example, standalone ECUs are great tools to ensure your own right to repair because as standalone ECUs become more sophisticated, as they have CAN bus, for example, there are ways you can control things on more modern cars. You're not just limited to like pre-2000
or
whatever.
That's why we like the Rust CFI because what people also don't see is, okay, you buy a standalone, but that does not mean you have full realm over it. I mean, for example, if you buy an HP Tuners MPI, was it MPI V4 or MPI V3, whatever they have now, it's basically just a dongle that plugs into your OBD2 port on a compatible vehicle that they've shown on their list, usually like Chevys and domestics.
It's a flash tuner.
It's a flash tuner.
Yeah.
But the funny part about it is you pay so much for the tool, and then you have to pay credits on each VIN that you use or however, and the amount of credits depends on the vehicle that you're trying to tune. So if it's like a not so expensive car, like
Really?
this 02, I think it was like an 02 Camaro I was working on, it was like 2 credits, which was like, I think $100. I might be getting this wrong, but yeah, everyone understands what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then like a Corvette or something, it'll be like 6 credits. So now you're paying $300 to gain access to your
fundamentally
Corvette.
It's an LS and runs the same way. And
now they have the right to do that, but what's just wild about it is you're paying twice.
You're paying for the hardware. Then you're paying for the ability to use the hardware each time you use it.
And you can't change the way it works at all. Whereas with this Rustify that we're using from Andre, it is completely open source.
Yeah.
And what that means is we can source the chips ourselves if we wanted. We could source and make our own PCB. We could even take the firmware, which is completely open source. We can see all of the code and we can change it any way we want, even though we probably won't.
Well, and
But
even there are forks of RustCFI too now.
There is.
There are.
And that level of transparency, I think, is far more valuable than any piece of proprietary tool.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that's really special about RustCFI, but anything open source. If you just, and again, it's not like Andre's paying me to say this.
Yeah.
I just genuinely really support the ideal behind the product. But
because you can go here. Oh, another great example, because we dealt with the Pro EFI.
Yeah.
A long time ago. And mind you, I'm not, we say that I'm a tuner, but I am really a hobbyist. I am fairly figured out what to do and stuff. I help people out a lot. But even like
you've made some pretty mean tunes on cars though, that do really cool things,
but
and obliterate tires and stuff. I'm just saying, don't sell yourself short here. You're being humble.
But an example is like when we were working on Tycho's old IS300.
Yeah.
And the first thing he bought was that Pro EFI.
That thing was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it was a nightmare for the stupidest of reasons, because on paper, that thing was fantastic. It had a nice case, had like amp seal connectors. I mean, it could do anything you ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
Basically. But you were locked into their realm of software. You could not custom set up a trigger decoder for your life. You had to contact them and ask them for what you have set up and communicate with them what you have. It was such a frustrating experience trying to diag and get that thing to run that we ditched it.
Yeah.
And within another day, because at the time, our honestly, my knowledge at the time was limited. And everything, but I still remember playing with that Pro EFI, and I actually dealt with one later on another, like a Mark IV Supra, and it was again just a terrible experience using it. And that kind of turned me off to a lot of these expensive standalones, is because they're not giving you the freedom like I would expect them to. You're buying a product that's thousands of dollars. You're putting it in your hobby car. You're expecting to be able to figure it out, but they've taught you that, oh no, you need someone who knows what they're doing to wire this up. You need someone that knows what they're doing to tune it. You need a dyno. You need this and that. What happened to the days when people would just throw jets at carburetors and just send it and tune by the spark plug reading, looking at the spark plugs? We've lost all that because no one, as soon as you hit wiring and tuning, everyone just looks at you with a blank stare, like they don't know what they're doing. And oh, nope, they're just going to leave that to the tuner. We don't know what we're doing. You just built this expensive car. You welded and fabricated all this work, painted, put together all these parts, and you're scared because you don't understand the tuning aspect of it. And that's where I really like that stuff, because this lets you see all the inner workings of what's happening. Because it realistically, at the core of fuel injection, and overall just tuning and making any 4-stroke motor run for that matter, it's brain dead simple. Mm-hmm. It really is. It just comes down to a few basic things. Have enough fuel, not too much fuel, the right timing, and looking at sensors, open the throttle, really basic stuff. The only thing that fuel injection has done for us basis carburetors is that we get more precise results.
Yeah.
That's it. And the hardware and the software that does it, we've had around since like the 80s.
Easily. And if not even earlier, really.
It's really caveman like. We're not doing state-of-the-art stuff here anymore. Like realistically, it's been done and done again. It's not that complicated.
Yeah. And when you look at the state of this, I like how you said, what happened to the days of jetting something and looking at the spark plugs, the hot rodding days, really, where it wasn't a big thing, where you didn't take it necessarily to a crazy performance shop. You had a fun car. You took it to the drag strip. You did some runs with it. This is an era that predates my time, right? But I know there's people listening who remember this era well and who think hot rodding, for all intents and purposes, is dead in the modern era. But here's the thing. We have the tools available to us at price points that are very compelling now to be able to do this, because you can get a standalone, but you don't have to read your spark plugs, for example. You can get a cheap wideband and put it in there. Immediately what that engine.
You should do
both. I know you should do both. But my point being is you're not incumbent on, or you're not relying on that one thing anymore. We have tools that are affordable that allow us that same level of flexibility we once had, but people are blind to it. They're not paying attention to that.
There's just this big gap because you get people that like, I've known people that will swear that they will not go standalone because the factory electronics start the engine and do everything so reliably because it's tuned that way. But then you also lose out on the fact that when you do try to do power adders, that ECM is actually limited and you're just pushing it into the tops of like the borders of tables where it's not going to give you anything more.
Yeah.
And now you're having to play tricks trying to get more fuel, putting bigger injectors in, runs fat down here, runs okay up here. And standaloning just get this bad rap because the moment that you start talking about wiring and tuning, even if it's like a simple hobbyist car, like one of our 240s.
One of your many Volvo 240s?
Oh, yeah. You got to get it tuned. You got to spend all this money. You got to get the wiring done like this. You got to take it to a dyno. And the amount of stories I've heard. I mean, just recently talking to a friend with his Supra. There's this beautiful build, right? Mm-hmm. Beautiful Mark IV Supra build, like one of the best ones I've seen, honestly. And I'm not just talking Supras. It's just overall a really good car. Mm-hmm. He buys an ECU Masters black, and he takes it up to a shop that's does a lot of, probably does YouTube stuff. They're too busy. They put on the side burner. They probably put maybe a day or two of time at it. They miss a couple things. And, they spent all this money, and these people are half-assing it too. He took it to the dyno there because he expected like that was how you get it done.
Yeah.
And he got back a car that wouldn't even start.
Wow. To spend all that money with a tuner and get a car back that doesn't start. That's crazy. And I will say, I've heard of stories like this online. I've talked to people who've had terrible experiences with tuners, and that they're charging them a lot of money. I mean, it's not cheap. It's very expensive to do. And perhaps if you're running on the ragged edge of performance and you actually have a competition car,
That's actually what I was trying to get at, is because
you need 10/10 of that engine and you need it to be reliable and perfect. There's, I think, where your application is for a dyno, for a tuner, for all of this stuff. Whereas if you're a guy with a street car, maybe a fun project car, maybe it's an autocross car, but you're not like, super competition level, you don't really need a lot of that. You just need your AFRs to be in the good spot. The engine needs to be happy. It needs to be running well, but you don't need all of that.
And that's what I was actually trying to get at is, you could be a hobbyist just trying to get their car to run nicely, have like a decent setup, right?
Yeah.
Run good. It's not asking a lot for an ECM to just run a car like 90% reasonably well. It's really not. There's not that much. We've done it with even the Speeduinos.
I was just about to say
that. And we've made them run better than the factories would run them on those old cars, like surprisingly well.
Because my 86 prior to the beam swap now was on a Speeduino, and that's before I had any Rust EFI stuff in my life, like on my S2000.
And that was still a learning curve for both of us.
It was, but it worked really good for what it did.
Because I've had times, and that was the thing too with the Speeduinos. I really loved the Speeduino because it was my first dip into like open source ECM stuff, but it was a very slow architecture. But it was fairly, it was mature enough to use, but then like with the wiring aspect and putting in some cars, I had some cars that were more successful than others building. Some I really wish I could go back and change.
Yeah.
And that was just all part of the process of learning this stuff.
Yeah.
That I wish other people would also spend the time to figure out, because there's just too many people out there that want to do this hobbyist stuff that think that like this stuff is well too above them to understand, when it's really not. Like, it really isn't that complicated. There's a lot of things that you can go dive into that can be far more complicated, but the overall, what you need to understand and how to use it, it's not that bad.
Well, and again, here, we're not talking like full race team level stuff. We're not talking about motorsports engineering. That's a lot of this on a very high level.
That's the gap.
Right. But we're talking about something usable for the everyday guy, maybe wants to have a fun off-road rig, fun track car, a street car that's just, you get in, you start it, and you go have some fun, and you cruise around on a Sunday, maybe do a highway pull here and there. And that's what a lot of people, realistically, we all have this notion. I think part of this comes back from the early 2000s reality TV shows, and then that spooled into like the car shows.
Yeah.
And then that spooled into the YouTube era. And then all through the last decade, we have been flooded with YouTubers doing crazy builds, all these super nutty, really wonky things chasing the algorithm.
If you're not building crazy builds, then what are you even doing?
And everyone I run into, I won't say everyone, that's a generalization, but a lot of people I run into just casually in the car scene, when you've invited me over and you've been working on a customer car or something, like, oh, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to do this crazy, 1,500 horsepower or nothing. This is going to be the best car in the world. It's like, yeah, but you're never actually doing that with it. And half the time, these people aren't even taking it to the track. And of those that do, they're honestly guys like me who are getting out to the track for like weekend events and maybe being in like a local, sort of point series, but nothing beyond that. Again, we're not talking racing competition like motorsports engineering. We're not talking crazy YouTube builds, but everyone, because of social media, thinks that they need an 10 out of 10, I should say an 11/10ths build.
And they think they can do it for a ridiculous price.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been running that into a lot. And I think a part of my job here, when I do get projects, because I'm not usually trying to bring in a lot of crazy projects, but when I do get someone that like is serious about building a car, that is like one of the first things that we're working on is, what is your actual goal here? And let's figure out how realistic this goal is. Let's talk about how expensive it's really going to be to get there.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, these people realize, oh, I really do just want a faster, funner, like more engaging street car, not 1,500 horsepower, not a straight drag car, because those cars you can't drive well on the street. And when if you do want them to drive well on the street, this just becomes even far more expensive. And you see those builds, just like you said, on these YouTubers, and they're really expensive builds. And these people don't realize how much money is going into these projects.
Well, and
or sponsored.
I was going to say, people also don't realize that the crazier the project, the more sponsors it needs to get, the more clicks it needs to get. The YouTube world is driven to do stuff that is crazier and crazier and crazier by design. That's what the algorithm rewards. That's what the viewers reward. And that's what the sponsors reward. But when you're a guy working on your own car, people have, again, this unrealistic expectation. They set that as the bar for their project build. And I think it's totally missing the mark, because you're right. They're not going to do that. That's not how they're going to drive it. And actually having that attainable goal of what do you want the car to do, and how much do you want to spend? A great example is my S2000 with the K24, because people are like, oh, just do a K-swap. They're really cheap. And like, okay, I'll do a K-swap. And for me, it was because
it's really cheap.
Right.
It's really cheap if you source every single part yourself over a laborious amount of time.
And I frankly don't have the time to do that, because I have a busy day job and 2 day jobs really. And I got to do stuff. I got to make money to build the car. And, people are like, oh, it's a couple grand for a K24. It's like, okay, by the time I had that in the car, no one talks about the price. I don't think anyone wants to talk about price on this. I think we should be more open with how much we're spending on cars realistically. Just don't tell your girlfriend or your wife. Don't tell them. We should be open.
We only talk about how much, it costs to get the block. Oh, how much it got the transmission.
But it's okay, because I sold some other parts and I traded some stuff. So I'm into it for like nothing. Just tell her that. So,
yeah.
Anyway, but I mean, like in reality, my S2000, I'm probably, I did the receipts not too long ago. I'm a little over $14,000 into my S2000. with doing the drivetrain swap. And you're like, well, how does that happen? The K24 is this and your parts are this. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. There's the wiring. There's the cost of every little detail. It adds up.
All the little parts that you forget about that cost money. It
adds up really quick. And my expectation is, okay, so I just put $14,000 into a car that I paid $10,000 for. And yes, I did buy that car. That was the cheapest clean title S2000 at the time when I bought it in the country. But that was also a while ago now. But having said that, I put that money into there and I'm maybe making stock power now.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Maybe really if that. And frankly, we haven't had that one on a dyno. Now, for me, wanting to get into some of the more serious racing with it now, I'm going to have to dyno it because some of the racing I want to do and the classing requires a dyno. You have to be at a certain power to weight ratio. So that's something I'm going to have to explore doing. But until now, the need for it hasn't come up. And it's been fun for the weekend track days I've been doing with it. Does great in autocross. It's got more torque where it needs it. But I may be making stock power. Again, you put all this money into it to do that. And the expectation for me was that. That didn't come as a surprise to me because I was expecting that. That's what I was going for. I just wanted reliability and parts available.
I want to say just again how many times I've seen someone come to me that needed help, just like the Supra.
Yep.
Had another guy with like a Miata, a few others. I can't get them off the top of my head. Where they went to a dyno, they went to a real shop. They thought they were spending money to get the real thing. Like they got a full tune, like it was going to be magic, and it runs like crap.
Yeah.
It runs like crap up until you make power.
I was going to say, is that because they're chasing peak power or not?
All they do is power runs. They don't look at anything else. They don't look at startability, drivability, accelerant, or like transient loading or decels or anything like that. That's just, okay, let's just figure out this, this full load and it's good to go. We'll just smooth everything else out. Yeah, it's kind of hard to start. You might have to pump the gas. It's ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous to me how little time is spent on this other stuff. I can, most of the time, have a car running better than they come off the dyno and make almost similar power without having the dyno.
Yeah.
Because realistically, as long as everything is working right and your timing is on point for the most part, pretty close, and you're giving it the right amount of fuel, anything between certain low, like between like 11 to 13, depending on like what kind of engine and what kind of power we're trying to make, it'll just run right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all the other little stuff that you miss, like having a spark blowout and having to do dielectric grease on the boots, or checking your spark plug gap, or finding out that the injectors break up at a certain RPM, not because they're not fueling it correctly, but because you're getting a weird spray pattern at one particular RPM. I ran into that one time with a set of RX-8 injectors on a Miata.
Really?
Yeah. And when I was like, man, we got the AFR on point. The AFR is not showing any weird behavior. We know our ignition's good. I think we should throw injectors at it. He bought a new set of injectors. Car ran smooth as hell right after that. Just a little stuff like that. Or running into like issues with the plumbing, not having check valves on the idle for maybe like the oil trap, or blowing boost in the crankcase. Like just little stuff that people just don't even think about. They think it's all in the tune. It's not. It really comes down to how you build your car. You cannot make an ECU run a crappy build well. You might be able to make it run, but if it's built poorly, it's going to run poorly. It's just how it is.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. And
not to mention crank sensor problems as far as like trigger decoders go. If you don't have a good, clean trigger signal for either your cam, crank, or however your trigger decoder's set up, you're not going to have a good time. You're not going to have a car that runs well, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Unless that crank and cam trigger setup is correct, has no electrical noise, no jitter, it's gonna be a tough time for you.
Yeah. I've seen issues with that come up with a lot of folks. I mean, you get like, sync errors, you get problems with that. And I remember in the early days of doing this stuff, like my 86 was a challenging one to get synced.
Yeah, we did some interesting stuff.
We had to do some kind of custom stuff that at least at the time no one else was doing it this way, but to get that to work. And even then we were running that trigger off of the cam, not the crank itself.
Yeah. So not to dive too deep into the details, but for example, a lot of older JDM cars had very noisy distributor setups they used, especially on the Toyotas, you do like was it like a 24 tooth plus 1+1. So it was like 3 different VR sensors kind of wrapped up in one distributor module. But the problem is that they were incredibly noisy and they shared a ground. So what we did with yours is we took the 24 tooth, and instead of using all of the VR sensors, we actually cut a tooth off of your 24 to make a 24-1, and we were able to do full sequential with just that. And we were able to, and since we did that, we didn't need the distributor to send the ignition to, you have spark plug wires sent to each cylinder. We were able to go call and plug right out of the bat and full sequential. Everyone else, it had to run either a custom crank trigger with a cam trigger that was expensive, or they were just dead in the water trying to use the stock one and running into noise issues.
And when you reuse the stock one, at least on that car with that motor, you had to do a really wonky distributor relocation and relocate it to the front of the one of the timing belt gears there.
And remember, I matched your distributor with a resistor.
Yes.
Just to get the noise down on startup.
Yeah.
Because the VR does not give you a very reliable signal at low speeds.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and again, not to scare people off from the do-it-yourself mindset here, because all of that sounds very complicated if you're not familiar with it. But I think the ease of information for this stuff is getting better, for one. There's more documentation on it. Like that's one of the things that Andre with Russ EFI says, yeah, we know we need to improve that.
Yeah.
We know people have told us the documentation isn't great. We're working to improve that. And the great thing with an open source project like that is not only does he contribute to improving that, but other people are coming in who've already figured it out and say, hey, here's how you do it. Here's your step-by-step. Here's the setup you need to do that. And I think that sharing of information is really important in this sense, because that goes back to the old school days of hot rodding. What happened then? You learn from somebody who learned from somebody on like, oh, this is what you do. Or I got a buddy who, you know what, these jets work really good here at this altitude. Try that. That sharing of information is something that I think we get distant on in the car world when it comes to all these. Again, everything has to be a super crazy build. It starts.
This is the future of hot rodding. This is what hot rodding is not dead. People just got to realize that like this hobbyist ECU stuff with open source is probably the future for hot rodding. This could be us on a weekend, plugging in a $300 ECU or trying to rewrite a trigger decoder to work on some foreign looking trigger setup on a car, engine, whatever, trying to make it run. And that's the future of hot rodding, and just running all sorts of batchy weird parts, us running Volvo parts in cars that aren't Volvos.
My cars keep having Volvo parts on them now.
How does that keep happening?
Why does that keep happening?
Volvo coil packs, Volvo sensors.
I have the Volvo air pump on the 86.
Oh, the vacuum pump, yeah.
Yeah, that's on there.
And that's just, I think that right there, that's the heart of hot rodding that everyone seems to have lost, is that it's about like being able to just take stuff, not just new stuff, just find stuff laying around and repurpose it in a way that makes it work beautifully.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've done multiple times.
People used to do swap meets.
Yeah.
Does that still happen? It's been forever since I've heard of a swap meet happening.
It'd be so hard to do swap meets now because people be putting parts and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you got JDM stuff here. You got your domestic stuff here. Right. Yeah. There's a lot more like dynamicness to the car world than when everyone had a small block Chevy. And,
yeah.
All
right. Volvo's got like a Mitsubishi, 4G63 cam crank sensor on it, optical CAS. It's got Mustang injectors on it. It's got a Mustang transmission. It's got a Volvo engine, Porsche head. It just gets weird. Everything starts being weird parts.
Yeah.
Electric pumps.
But I do think down to its core, there's more as the enthusiast world goes that I think, in terms of communicating and, sharing information on builds and hot rodding wasn't just about making the fastest pass you could. That was part of it, but
it was the journey.
It was the journey. It is the friends you made on that journey. It was everybody having fun and breaking cars and doing stupid stuff together.
I remember that when we did that initial Speeduino build on your 8.6, we did it in the rain outside.
It was like 2 a.m.
I literally took the stock harness. I said,
old apartment I lived at.
Let's see how fast I can chop this harness up and get this thing running.
And it was like 2 a.m. in the rain, and we got it running.
Yeah. With a little bit of work, we were able to chop the whole harness up and have it wired up and running. And it worked pretty well.
We didn't go through that harness for like it ran that way for a while.
Really chopped up.
But it worked. So now wrapping this up, Brian. So, looking at that, I think you've got a really valuable perspective when it comes to this hobbyist tuning stuff, when it comes to the electrical side of that. Here's a thought, and if you're listening and if you're watching on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, or if you're catching it on the radio, there's a lot of ways to catch this show. But I want you to either comment on YouTube or email me, matt@automotiveadhd.com. Any questions you would have for Brian, like ask a tuner, like, okay, what question would you have about tuning? And maybe I'm not saying like send your your fuel map to him and be like, Brian, fix my fuel map. Like you might need to pay him to do that. So
yeah, I won't be able to do that for you, but I can definitely answer electrical questions all day. If you have questions about sensors
or just like good practices when you're tuning, or what's some general stuff. Like if you could ask a tuner anything, let me know. And then we'll have Brian back on the show. We'll do this again here in Brian's shop, and we'll answer your questions. So go ahead and do that. YouTube again. Email me, matt@automotiveadhd.com. And just make sure if you email me, put something in the subject line that I can actually spot in there. Normally we say we love Jim Miller's Mustang. You could pick something. Pick whatever you want. So anyway, Brian, I do appreciate you joining me here on the show. I will say that as we're actually in your shop, so I guess I'm the guest here. I don't know how it works, but anyway, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, this show is on the radio in Southern Colorado, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, and more, wherever fine shows and, this one are downloaded. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time.